Here's a question almost nobody asks.
Is everything okay?
The deal's falling apart. I have to fix this.
Let me help. We can do this together.
Thank you. I couldn't do this without you.
Not what do you earn, not how comfortable you feel, but where, really, do you fall on America's wealth scale? Because most people think they know the answer. Most people are wrong. Before we talk about the scale, we need to talk about the difference between two numbers that most people treat as the same thing: income and wealth. They are not the same, not even close. Income is what flows into your life. Wealth is what stays. And in America right now, for tens of millions of people, almost nothing stays. Take a surgeon. $350,000 a year. Medical school debt of $290,000. A mortgage, 2 car payments, private school tuition, nice vacations. On paper, a high earner, a success story. But their net worth? After you subtract every debt from every asset? Often negative. Now take a 58-year-old electrician in Ohio, earns $62,000 a year, never left his hometown, but he owns his house outright, has $180,000 in his 401k, no debt. His net worth? Over $300,000, more than most college-educated professionals in major cities. The scale doesn't measure what you earn. It measures what you keep. So, the scale. Let's actually look at it. Not the version politicians talk about, not the one TV shows portray. The real one, built from Federal Reserve data, from the actual numbers. America's wealth distribution has 5 real tiers, and the moment you see them, the moment you understand what separates them, you will never think about money the same way again. Tier 1, the bottom. Approximately 40 million Americans have a net worth below zero, negative net worth, more debt than assets. They aren't on the scale, they are beneath it. Medical debt, student loans, payday loans, credit card spirals. This isn't laziness, this is architecture, a system specifically designed to extract every dollar before it can become anything permanent. Tier 2, the struggling middle. Net worth between $0 and $192,000. This is where most Americans actually live, not the comfortable middle, the struggling middle. A small amount of equity in a car, maybe the beginning of a retirement account. Little cushion, no generational wealth. One major emergency away from Tier 1. Tier 3, the stable middle. Net worth between $192,000 and $500,000. This is the tier most Americans aspire to, and the tier most Americans never reach. A paid-down mortgage, a growing 401k, some financial breathing room. This is genuine stability, but it is not wealth, not yet. Tier 4, the comfortable class. Net worth between $500,000 and $1.1 million. This is where money starts doing more work than you do. Investment returns begin to compound meaningfully. Retirement feels possible. About 1 in 10 American households lives here. Tier 5, the wealthy. Net worth above $1.1 million. America has roughly 22 million millionaires, about 7% of households. But here's the thing almost nobody tells you. $1 million in 2025, if most of it is in a home, generates about $40,000 a year in retirement. That's barely above the national median household income. Millionaire doesn't mean what it used to mean. And then, far above even that, is a tier most people can barely conceptualize. The top 1%. net worth above $11 million. The top 0.1% above $43 million. And the billionaires, in a stratosphere so removed from normal human experience that no chart can contain them and no comparison can make them real. Here's what makes this fascinating and deeply unsettling. Most Americans don't just misunderstand the wealth scale. They misunderstand it in a specific direction. In a landmark study from Harvard and Duke, researchers asked thousands of Americans two questions. What do you think the current distribution of wealth is in America? And what do you want it to be? The results were staggering. People thought the top 20% owned about 59% of all wealth. The real number? 84%. But here's the part nobody talks about. When asked what their ideal distribution would look like, what kind of wealth gap they'd actually choose, Americans from both political parties converged on essentially the same answer. A society that looked like Sweden. Not capitalism, not socialism, Sweden. Which means we are a nation that wants one thing and has built something else entirely. Why? Because the system has made its own scale nearly impossible to see. We don't compare ourselves to the nation. We compare ourselves to our street, our office, our Instagram feed. If your neighbors all drive the same car, that car feels normal. If your friend group all took out student loans, that debt feels universal. If every person you know owns a home, you assume home ownership is the default. But the person 3 miles away, 3 income brackets away, lives in a reality so different from yours that you share a country, but not an economy. Psychologists call this relative deprivation, and it means the scale you measure yourself against isn't the real one. Here's something that should stop you cold. If you were born in 1940, a baby boomer, and you bought a median-priced home in 1965, that home might have cost $20,000. Today, that same home could be worth $450,000 or more. You didn't earn that appreciation. You just showed up at the right time. Now consider someone born in 1990, millennial. They graduated into the worst financial crisis since the Great Depression. In 2008, starter homes had tripled in price. Student debt had become an industry. The jobs that were supposed to be there weren't. By 2024, millennials, who make up 22% of the U.S. population, hold only 9% of national wealth, the lowest share of any generation at their age in recorded history. This is not a character flaw. This is a timing problem, a structural problem, and it doesn't stop at generation. In America, the zip code you are born into is a more reliable predictor of your lifetime wealth than almost any decision you will ever make. Not your work ethic, not your intelligence, not your ambition. The zip code. Children born into the top income quintile have a 38% chance of staying there as adults. Children born into the bottom quintile have an 8% chance of reaching the top. The American dream, the idea that where you start doesn't determine where you finish, is not supported by the data. The U.S. now has lower economic mobility than Canada, Germany, Denmark, and Australia. Countries that Americans have historically looked down on as too socialist. The elevator was always going up. It just wasn't always stopping on your floor. So, where do you actually stand? Here's how to find out, right now. Step 1. Calculate your net worth. Add up everything you own that has monetary value. Your home's current market value, your retirement accounts, your savings, your car's current value, any investments. That's your assets. Now subtract everything you owe. Your mortgage balance, student loans, car loans, credit card balances, any other debt. Assets minus liabilities. That number, however uncomfortable it is your real position. Step 2. Place yourself. Net worth below zero. You are not behind. You are carrying weight the system placed on you, but you are beneath the scale, and understanding that is the first step to changing it. Net worth $0 to $192,000. You are in the majority, the struggling middle. The most important thing you can do is build a cushion, an emergency fund, equity. Begin. Net worth $192,000 to $500,000. You have done something most Americans haven't. You are stable. The question now is not survival, it's acceleration. Net worth $500,000 to $1.1 million. Money is working alongside you. Your decisions now compound. Be deliberate. Net worth above $1.1 million. You are in the top 10%. Whether you feel wealthy or not, the scale says you are. Step 3, and this is the one most people skip. Ask not just where you are, but at what rate you're moving. A 30-year-old with a negative net worth but no consumer debt, low rent, and $500 a month going into a Roth IRA? On a better trajectory than a 35-year-old earning $200,000 with no savings, maxed out credit cards, and a lifestyle that requires all of it. The scale is a snapshot. The trajectory is the story. The scale exists. It is real, and it is steep, and it was not designed with you in mind. But the map is not the territory. Knowing where you are, clearly, honestly, without the comforting fiction of imagined middle, is not a defeat. It is the only place from which anything real can begin. The people who built this scale understood one thing deeply, that as long as you're comparing yourself to your neighbor, as long as the perception gap persists, you will never look up far enough to see how steep the climb actually is. So look up, not with envy, not with despair, with clarity. Because the first step toward any destination is knowing exactly where you're standing.
Where do you fall? Tell us in the comments. Subscribe for more economic reality checks.